Hey everyone, welcome back to Masonzero MTG. When you think of all the fun cube themes that you can make and draft, I bet most of you don't have defenders in your top 5 or even top 25. But defenders can actually be a pretty fun and different archetype, and I'm going to go into how to make this draft theme work if it's something you're interested in. The biggest challenge is of course that defenders go against the normal playstyle of Magic, that being winning through traditional combat damage. So we'll need to address those limitations and find a way to win after we're done blocking. Starting with colors, defenders are of course splashed throughout all colors, but you'll find the most synergistic support cards in white, green, and blue, with green being the primary color for payoffs, so I would lean towards green-white if you're going for a 2-color combo. But if you want to do 3 colors, there is a great signpost in Arcades the Strategist. This banned legendary creature draws cards when you play defenders, and lets your defenders attack and deal damage equal to their toughness. This second ability and variations of it on other cards are going to be the most important way to win in this theme. So another key card is Assault Formation. But there are several great options that you can put in depending on how well they synergize and what density you want. Another option, if you choose to do green and blue, is the Pride of Wholeclade, which has some pretty absurd abilities. High Alert is in blue-white, and it's pretty much that same ability, but on an enchantment this time. Walking Bulwark is another card with this ability, costing 1 mana for an 0/3 defender and granting the attacking ability for just 2 mana. This of course can apply to itself, and it's also an artifact. Then we have Bedrock Tortoise, which lets all creatures with higher toughness than power deal damage equal to their toughness, however it doesn't let your defenders attack. Huatli the Sun's Heart has a functionally similar ability, as well as some life gain. A couple of these signposts in your cube will help this archetype come together, and which ones you choose are going to factor into how the archetype actually plays out. But first, I want to thank LDB Duel for sending me this awesome deck box. They make custom deck boxes, playmats, and more, but what makes them stand out from the competition to me is that they actually employ a graphic designer that can work with you to create your own custom art for your card game accessories. But they also have a lot of pre-made options, like this one that I asked for, with the stained glass mana symbols from Dominaria United. The art printing is high quality both in terms of resolution and color. The deck box itself is a really cool design, where this magnetic cover comes off to reveal 2 removable boxes, one for your deck and another where you can put dice, tokens, or whatever. The build quality seems great, and I'll definitely be using this when I go out to play Commander. You can use my link, which is on screen or in the description, to get 10% off your first order from LDB Duel, and that's going to be ldbduel.com/discount/Masonzero10. Or you can use Masonzero5 to get 5% off any subsequent orders. And if you do use these codes, I'll get a little bit of a kickback for it, so I appreciate that. And I definitely recommend checking them out if you're in the market for a deck box like this, or a playmat, or something like that. Now, back to the video. So how about some payoffs next? Obviously being able to attack with a bunch of walls is a good payoff, but there are more payoffs as well that we can look at. Towering Titan costs 6 mana and enters with a +1/+1 counter equal to the total toughness of other creatures you control. Then you can sack a defender to give all of your creatures trample. This can, in theory, win the game on its own if you have a couple of defenders in play already. Weathered Sentinels is one of the best defenders if you want to try to win the game. It can attack if you were attacked last turn, and it does so as a 5/8 with Trample, Vigilance, and Indestructible. On blocks, it has Reach as well, so on the off chance you do get attacked, you can attack with it next turn. But it's also a very effective blocker. So this combination of keywords means you'll be blocking damage and dealing damage pretty effectively. Wingmantle Chaplain makes a bunch of 1/1 flying tokens in a defender's deck, and these flyers can help you win the game in the air. Blight Pile and Vent Sentinel are off color, but can kill your opponents with their abilities if you choose to run them. Now, to prevent this archetype from being too parasitic, we want there to be enough defenders and defender cards that are playable in non-defenders deck. We don't want our defenders to be too generic, and we don't want the defenders players to be drafting on rails. Let's start with a staple of green cards, Mana Dorks. Overgrown Battlement is a 2-mana dork that even in a non-defender's deck taps for 1 mana and blocks pretty well, but it gets way better with defender synergy. Axebane Guardian is very similar, being 1 mana more expensive but also quite a bit more flexible. Sylvan Caryatid is a card any green deck could want, and it's a defender, so this is a fantastic way to seed synergy into the defender's archetype without getting too specific. And finally, Wall of Roots has long been a cube staple, so that would be an easy include. So you see how easy it is to seed in some defenders into traditional cube roles. Maybe just take out your Llanowar Elves and put in Wall of Roots instead. Now let's look at some cards that may synergize and cross over with other themes, or maybe even be good enough on their own that non-defender decks might be okay playing them. Not all of these cards are going to be winners, and it's going to depend on the power level and sort of total picture of your cube, but maybe you'll find something you like. Novice Knight isn't super impressive, but it can bridge the gap between defenders and an equipment or aura deck. Perimeter Captain, Wall of Essence, Overgrown Arch, and Jotty Offshoot can help gain you some life, so it'll be good picks to cross over with a life gain deck. Sultai Flayer can be played in a deck with any big green creatures, but it can also gain you a ton of life when your walls die. Cathedral Membrane is a weird way to threaten to kill a big attacker, but it's an artifact if you have artifact synergies. Electrostatic Field can encourage a spells deck to splash defenders. Mnemonic Wall can return an instant or sorcery when it enters, making it great for a spells deck, and still playable in a blue defenders deck. It's also already a pretty common cube card. Crashing Drawbridge is colorless and can grant haste to all of your creatures, making it desirable in pretty much any slightly aggressive deck. Now there are many defenders that replace themselves with card draw, and are perfectly fine to splash in your cube as tempo cards. Jungle Barrier, Wall of Omens, Wall of Blossoms, and Flumph come to mind. These cards may also cross over with a Blink theme if you have one. Wall of Omens is a famous Blink card. Wall of Frost and Wall of Denial are pretty brutal control cards that can make white-blue stand out. So as you can see, defenders and certain control or tempo decks can share a lot of cards, as they both seek to slow down the game and grind out value later on. Defender positive removal isn't super common, but it's not unheard of, and there are a few interesting picks we can choose from. The best board wipe for defenders that is still totally playable outside of defenders is Slaughter the Strong. Each player picks creatures they control with total power 4 or less, then sacks the rest. So they have to get rid of most of their creatures, and you get to keep every single one of your walls most likely. Fell the Mighty and Expel the Interlopers are other interesting situational board wipes and will have a similar effect, likely destroying all creatures with more than 0 power. If you only have room for a few board wipes in your list, these can help power up a defender's archetype. Shield Wall Sentinel is not great on its own, but it can search up another defender and is colorless itself, making it an easy way to find whatever card you need. This is a great card to show your drafters that defenders is open. Wall of Stolen Identity is a clone that makes the copy a wall, but also taps down the copied creature as long as you have the clone. Now how about some cards in other colors? Keru Bloodsucker drains for life when creatures with toughness 4 or greater die, and has a sack outlet built in. I definitely recommend looking at some of the Sultai cards from Khans of Tarkir that have this toughness 4 or greater theme if you're looking to build defenders. Undercity's Embrace is an edict that might gain you 4 life. Now let's look at a few cards that are great in cube, but are interesting with defenders involved. Swords to Plowshares has no downside if you exile a defender. Red cards that deal 4 or more damage will be at a premium if you have a lot of defenders, as most of them have 4 toughness. Consider cards like Flame Slash and Flame Tongue Kavu that will be a lot better in an environment with a lot of walls. Smash to Dust is not normally an impressive card, or maybe even one you remember, but for 2 mana you can destroy an artifact, a defender, or deal 1 damage to each creature. So if defenders is a theme, this can actually be a versatile and useful main deck card, as it will be good against defender, artifact, and aggro decks. Cheap black removal that is limited in scope can be good against defenders, but not all of them are ideal, they're just better in this context. Cut Down, Killing Glare, Foul Play, and Reave Soul are all pretty decent against walls that have little power. Because walls often have 0 and occasionally 1 power, anything that cares about creatures with a small power is going to be good. Murders at Karlov Manor is a great set to look at if you're looking for these cards, because it has some great ones. Assemble the Players, which lets you cast some defenders from your library. Another example is Delny Streetwise Lookout, which an aggro deck would want, but can also help you double up on all of your draw triggers from your defenders. Mentor of the Meek is another card that aggro would like, but it's playable in defenders thanks to the power requirement. In a previous video, I actually talked about how aggro is kind of a good example of an archetype that can have cards where you only want to play them in aggro. So weirdly, some of these white caring about low power cards are not just for aggro because Defenders wants them, which is funny because that's almost the exact opposite sort of strategy. So Defenders are a strange and certainly not commonly played draft theme. Just thinking about it makes you think of slow games with no attacks. But the theme is surprisingly deep and offers unusual playstyles and unique effects. So what do you think? Is this a theme that you run, or would you consider doing it? Let me know what kinds of cards work well for you and how your drafters feel about it. I'm currently running green-white Defenders in my Uncommons Synergy Cube, and it's interesting. It's definitely a different playstyle, but I don't dislike it, and using some of these crossover cards has been very, very interesting, and it's definitely not just a draft on rails. Anyways, don't forget to subscribe so you can see my next cube video.